This is Open Door with Vince Robinson. In-depth conversations with people who are making a difference in the lives of others here and around the world. Culture is at the heart of who you are. Know your culture, find yourself on Open Door with Vince Robinson.
Grand Dawn and Great Rising, Cleveland, Ohio, and planet Earth. Welcome to another edition of Open Door with Vince Robinson. You know, I look back at some of the recordings that I've done, and I just have to pinch myself because I have had the opportunity to talk to some of Cleveland's greatest legends. And the one that I am speaking to this morning is a native of Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm going to drop a few names. Now, bear with me because I got a lot of names to drop. But after I drop these names, I am absolutely certain that you are going to be blown away. He has a BA in string-based theory from Miami University of Ohio, and he's got another theory composition degree from Wichita State University. He's performed as a guest soloist both in the classical and jazz idioms. He is a former member of the Wichita Symphony and a published composer. Some of his past performances as a member of the jazz faculty of Wichita State and Friends University. He has been with Benny Golson, Sean Jones, Doc Cheatham, Earl Warren, Jerry Hahn, Richie Cole, Charlie Rouse, Andy Narell, Keith Copeland, and I know I'm murdering some of these names, Johnnie Harris, Eddie Daniels, Steve Houghton, Don Braden, Joe Williams, Jimmy Heath, Bobby Watson, Frank Mantooth, Benny Bailey, Ignacio Beroa, Yoron Israel, Robin Eubanks, Vanessa Rubin, a local first person, Tierney Sutton, Antonio Hart, James Newton, Cecil, Bridgewater, Clark, Terry, Nancy Wilson. I gotta stop. His name is Glenn Holmes. He is a bassist and he is also a friend. Welcome to Open Door with Vince Robinson, Mr. Glenn Holmes.
Hey there, Vince.
Man, yeah, I'm glad to have you, man. And you know, the one name that I didn't mention was Vince Robinson. I am completely and totally honored to have had the privilege of playing with you. You actually replaced another great friend of mine in the Jazz Poets, and that's Derek James.
Okay.
Yes. And another name that isn't on this list is Mwatabu Okanta, and Okanta is actually the reason that I even know you.
You know what? I have to update this bio. I was listening to you and looking at it as you were reading it, and I said, okay, it's time for another update. Because, I got stuff off of there that should be on there.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning. You and the bass, how did that happen? How did that come together?
Well, that's kind of a funny story. When I was in the sixth grade, the teacher asked, who would like to play a string instrument when you go to the seventh grade? And I raised my hand, and as well as other students in the room. And, then she asked, well, which instrument would you like to play? And my choice was cello. I wanted to play cello. And she said, okay, so she signed me up for that. Well, the summer before the seventh grade started, or in the summer before the seventh grade started, I was in a neighborhood football game like we used to play that you never hardly see that anymore. But I was in that football game and I broke my leg and I tore it up pretty bad. And I ended up having to go to a children's hospital. As a matter of fact, it was the Children's Hospital. And I was in the hospital for a month. Because I just tore my leg up real bad. And by the time I got out of the hospital and got back to school, all the cellos were gone. They had been assigned to other students. So the only thing that was left was a string bass. And that's why I started playing it. So it was kind of a fluke that I ended up on string bass, but I have no regrets.
Yes. Well, what was it about the cello that attracted you?
Oh, I like the sound of it in terms of it's a very lyrical instrument. it's in a register that I like. It's not real low. It's not real high. It's very versatile. And, I've always liked the sound of cellists. I mean, I still listen to cello sonatas and concertos and stuff like that every now and then. Yeah.
Mm. So, what about classical music? Yeah, I don't know how old you are. I'm assuming that we're somewhere close, but I just remember back in the day, it was primarily R&B music. My father was an avid music lover, so he listened to jazz and all of that. I was kind of stuck on R&B. I never really had any affinity to classical music. What was it about classical that drew you?
Well, when I started playing bass, props to some of my high school and junior high school buddies, I was so far behind the rest of the kids that some of my friends, they would stay after school and help me to learn the bass. They would work with me. And I don't know if any of them still play, the ones that I'm still in touch with. But anyway, they helped me to get caught up with everybody else. And then I started taking private lessons. And I don't know if you remember the Supplementary Educational Center that used to be downtown. They had 3 floors, and one floor was music, one floor was science, and the other floor was arts. And you could participate in that for free. So I started taking lessons down there. They provided an instrument for the students, and I took free lessons. And I always liked classical music. And when I started playing, I actually thought, hey, this is what I want to do for a living. I want to be a bassist in a symphony orchestra. So I studied pretty hard. I mean, I can remember at one point, one of my teachers who was in the Cleveland Orchestra at the time, I took 2 lessons from him on Saturdays. He taught at 2 different places. And at one time he taught at that Supplementary Educational Center. I took a lesson from him down there like around 9:30 in the morning. And I took another lesson with him at about 1:30 in the afternoon at the music settlement. So the challenge of the symphony music was something I liked. I guess even though I didn't know it at the time, I had this kind of composer's mind as well. And I did that. And then I still listen to classical music almost daily, maybe not a full symphony or whatever, but I'll turn it on. But I was in love with it when I was in high school. I made the Cleveland All-City Orchestra. I was the only African-American musician in there. My mom still talks about that, how people would stare at us because, I was the only one in the whole orchestra. And I have no regrets. I think that helped me to get along and kind of handle different situations where you're the only one in that environment, and so on and so forth. I didn't have any bad experiences. I want to make that clear, but I was the only African American in the orchestra. And then when I went to high school, I had this great teacher by the name of James O. Turner. We used to call him Jot. And he turned me on to jazz. I mean, I was playing R&B because if I showed you this picture one day when we're together, man, I'm going to show you this picture of me in that band, and you're going to fall off your chair when you see the way we all look, because we were good, man. We had a good band. We had horns and everything. But anyway, Mr. Turner turned me on to jazz and spent time with me because he was a bass player and a trombonist. And I still have a book that he gave me when I was in high school by Ray Brown. And at that time, that book was only available in Canada. You couldn't get it in the United States. But I remember him saying, here, you take this. I'm not going to do anything with it. So I kind of transitioned in not 100% classical, not 100% jazz, but the more I played, the more I wanted that freedom to play what I heard in my head. So I didn't let the classical stuff go, because I did play in the symphony, and I still teach classical bass to students, but jazz just grabbed my heart, and that's my favorite music of all time.
It's interesting. The experience that you had with James Turner is the same experience that I had with Mwatabu Okanta.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
he introduced me to jazz. I mean, he was a grad student at Kent, and I was a freshman, and I used to visit him at his apartment, and he would put on Arthur Blythe and Sonny Rollins and Coltrane and so forth. And back then I was kind of stuck on the funk, but I'm like, oh, this is nice.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah. So we have black classical composers, and I think sometimes we get stuck in this notion that classical music is European music, but then you have someone, and I can't remember the brother's name, but they described him as the Black Mozart, which is kind of it's kind of an insult too, because I think Mozart actually learned from him. But this idea of classical music, and you listen to it every day, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I really have been digging over the last maybe 3 or 4 years is classical guitar, and I listen to that every single day, and I now it's kind of in the background. There's 2 ways, as far as I'm concerned. Well, maybe 3 ways to listen to music. One, you can have it in the background to just help you get through whatever you're getting through. Anything from having a meal to writing up bills to, cleaning the house, whatever you're going to do. The other, one of the other ways is to go to performances, live performances. There's no substitution for that. But then the last way, and for a musician, I think one of the most important ways to listen to it is to listen to it without your instrument in your hand and just study what you hear, and how the musicians are interacting with one another, in not only overall, but in particular sections, like the rhythm section, the horns, that kind of thing. And, look at the compositional standpoint of it, because for me, transitions in music are the most difficult things when you go from one style to another, just to make that smooth, or even going from one key to another, just make that transition smooth. So those kinds of listening sessions, you're not doing anything else. You're just sitting there, maybe taking notes, and imagining, if I were playing bass, what would I play right there? Or where the heck did Christian McBride get that from? It sounds so good, because Christian come up with some stuff that you don't even think about, and when he plays it, it's just great.
Yes.
Well, so there's many ways to listen to music, but those 3 ways are basically the 3 ways that I listen to it.
Well, I thank you for that. And I think you have inspired me to start listening to classical music more. So I know how important it is. I know that it does provide a benefit to you aesthetically and spiritually and all that good stuff. So thank you for that. I'm going to find that classical station and I'm going to tune in. You're listening to Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM WOVU. My guest this morning is bassist Glenn Holmes, and he's got a lot more to share with us, and we'll do that when we get back. This is Burton Belcar Community Radio. We'll be right back.
WOVU 95.9 thrives daily to provide a positive forum for discussion of community issues and opportunities. Provide a creative platform for every segment of our community. Produce and distribute entertaining and uplifting cultural, educational, and artistic programming. Produce and distribute local community news, information, and public service announcements. Provide a platform for the live coverage of local community and school sports. Provide a portal for outsiders to rediscover the Forgotten Triangle and its potential. Provide media education and training to participating members of the community. Make no mistake, WOVU 95.9, Our Voices United, a solution-driven radio station.
Hey guys, this is D. Lachey. I'm all about togetherness. Together we make the world go round. You're listening to WOVU 95.9 FM.
We're back. Open Door with Vince Robinson and the conversation with bassist Glenn Holmes, who has inspired me to start listening to classical music. It's not that I'm a stranger to it. I've been witness to the Cleveland Orchestra, the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra, and so forth and so on. And I really appreciate music when it is live, but I also understand that there are probably things that could provide a benefit to me if I engaged in it. And my brother, you have just lit a fire. Let's talk about your education, because I see that you have a master's in music theory and composition from Wichita State University. How did you end up in Kansas?
Oh man, that's another story. It's a good story, needless to say. Well, when I was at Miami University, I studied. I have a bachelor's degree in string-based performance, as it's called. The difference between an educational bachelor's degree and a performance degree is one is geared towards teaching, like in the public school system or at the college level, or I should say, in addition to the college level. But in performance, you know, your focus is more on performing for others, not so much teaching. Maybe you teach privately or getting to the level where you could audition to be in an orchestra, so on and so forth. So that took part of my time. But the other time I was studying theory and composition. And as part of that program, each year we had in the spring we had a guest composer to come to Miami University and be the artist in residence for a week. So anyway, one of those years, this gentleman, composer named Dr. Walter Mays came, and he was our, artist in residence. So as part of that program, he was willing to give the composition students private lessons. And so when I had my lesson, we hit it off really well. Well, he was at Wichita State, or he was from Wichita State. And he said to me, he said, I need a graduate assistant. Would you be interested in coming out there? I was like, really? And he says, yes. He said, you'd be a teaching assistant, you'd have a stipend, and so on and so forth. And I said, sure, because I had no definite plans other than to continue to get better as a player, to maybe audition for an orchestra or whatever at that time, or to go to New York, that kind of thing. I hadn't decided. But when he made that offer, at that time, I didn't even know where Wichita was. I knew it was in Kansas, but I didn't know where it was. But I mean, I got a free ride for graduate school. I didn't have to pay anything other than my housing. So that's how I ended up out there. And funny thing is, the first, it's hot out in that's what I call the Midwest. I hear people call Ohio the Midwest, but I call Kansas, that area of the country the Midwest. Man, the first day I got out there and stepped off the airplane, it was 105 degrees. And that just knocked my socks off, because I had never been in that kind of heat. And the next day was 106. And, that's the way it is out there in the summertime, at least at that time. Who knows what's going on out there now with all the climate issues that we have. But it was super hot out there. And I must say that my time out there was great. I was playing jazz. I was playing in the orchestra. I played in music theater. I played in some avant-garde groups. I did a little bit of everything. And I was teaching and working on my degree. So I was a pretty busy guy.
Well, in light of everything that you shared about that experience, and then fast forwarding, I don't know, maybe 40, close to 50 years, it doesn't seem like a whole lot has changed in terms of the orchestras. And I'm just reflecting on certain realities about the orchestras that we have here. They're not very diverse. When you were going through your musical education journey, did you observe a lot of us in those rooms? Or I think you said you were always the only one.
Pretty much. For example, when I went to Miami University, now Miami at that time had about 15,000 students. And at that time, I think there were 315 African-American students. So you were the only, most of the time, and when I say most of the time, I'm talking about 98% of the time, you were the only African-American in your class, so that stood out to me. I never had any problems, and I don't know about some of the other folks. If they did, they never talked to me about it. But just that environment where everywhere you go, you're the only African American there. And again, I go back to those experiences helped me through some of my later musical experience where I was the only one. I was the only African American, or even in life outside of music. You're the only one. So it helps you to deal with that. Now, some of the orchestras have opened up more, but I've definitely observed, the limitation of African American players. I know they're out there and they're qualified, and quite honestly, since I'm not in that field, I don't even know how the audition procedures go now. I mean, at one time, you have to go audition in person. They had you behind the screen. The folks that are making the decisions never saw you. They just heard you play. I know, at least to a certain degree, now you have to get an invitation. You have to send in, a recording of yourself playing. Then they invite you to come in and perform in person or audition in person. So beyond that, I'm not really sure what everything's, how everything is run now. Now, one piece of good news that I have about that is there's a young man that went to the music settlement, and his name escapes me right now. But anyway, he was part of our jazz program. He was a bassoonist, and once he graduated, he got an orchestral job. I think in a city. It's a city in Texas, not a major city. But anyway, he just auditioned for the San Francisco Symphony and got picked up as their principal bassoonist, African American. So that was like, oh man, that was wonderful, just wonderful.
Yes. Well, there's a certain level of elitism amongst organizations, musical organizations on that level. People have master's degrees and so forth. But in the real world, a lot of us don't necessarily have that level of training. Such you have a master's in theory and composition. A lot of the cats that are playing in clubs and other spots in Cleveland don't have that pedigree, so they don't qualify. Do you see that the elitism in music on that level as one of the reasons that we're not as prominent as we should be in some of those musical settings?
Yes and no. The yes part is, as with many facets of life, folks assume that you're not able to perform at the same level that they are, which is not true at all. But that's reality. On the other hand, there are some folks out there that they know what's happening. You know, they see what's happening, and you know, they're the only way I can say it is they're good people. You know, they'll support you no matter what. And I ran into a lot of those people out in Wichita. You know, a lot of groups that I played in, they were interracial groups, and everybody was cool with the others. Now, that's not to say that elitism still existed or didn't still exist. You know, when people are looking at us saying, you know what, you're playing this, but could you play Beethoven Symphony if you had to? Well, I could say, yeah, you know, and that's not the point, you know, because I'll use jazz as an example. When I was a student and I was in the theory classes and the advanced theory classes, like third year theory, and the teacher would ask the question, how do you spell this chord? What is this scale? You know who always came up with the answers first?
It was Glenn Holmes.
No, it was the jazz students. It's the ones that study jazz, you know, because you use that stuff all the time, every day when you play, you know, and you're just aware of that. And the classical students, you know, some of them knew it, but many of them struggled with that. But for the jazz folks, shoot, that stuff came out of their mouths like, you know, just talking English to somebody, you know, just having a conversation. Because like I said, you use it every day. I'm still studying it. You know, I still have a lot to learn. Yes. And that's one of the beauties of jazz. You just never stop learning.
Well, you know, something else about jazz versus classical. I know some folks who are classically trained and they don't know how to improvise. If it's not on the paper in front of them, they can't play it. And I just find that interesting because improvisation is something that's difficult to learn in certain ways, but some of it, when you get to a certain level, it's just in you. It just comes out of you. You don't have to think about it. It just happens. But I've always found it fascinating that some classical musicians can't improvise.
Well, the irony of that is, they look at the jazz musicians, some of them, and they don't appreciate your ability to improvise. But do I have to play this string quartet or play this classical symphony? Oh, I can do that too. All right. For them, the improvisation is, their understanding is that you're just making it up. Well, that's putting it way too simply. You know, we don't have to have it written in front of us where they do, but that's the way they've been trained. I'm not holding that against them, because that's the path I was on. Yes. You know, play what's in front of you. And if you know that music is taken away, then there's like this black hole mentally. They don't know what to do, or they start playing scales. Yes.
Well, you know, I saw Chucho Valdez and not the Tri-C, but the Detroit Jazz Festival, and it was a windy day. And he had sheet music on the piano in front of him, and the wind blew it. And he kept playing. He knew what he was playing. He got the music back to the piano and continued the concert. But I tell you, it's a real gift to be able to navigate both worlds. Quite interesting conversation. We're going to get back to it when we get to the other side of this break. This is Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM WOVU, Burton-Bell Car Community Radio. My guest is bassist Glenn Holmes. We'll be right back.
She's having fun. She says you don't want to be like me. Don't want to see.
Yeah, no offense, but what were we just listening to?
Oh, just something my previous writer wanted to hear. Want something else?
Yeah, actually, for sure. Can you switch that station to 95.9 FM, please?
Yeah, for sure. What kind of station is this?
What? You're not hip to 95.9 FM, BBC Community Radio? They have so many good shows. Whether it's a talk show, music show, it's so much good information on this station.
Yeah, I'll have to keep the dial right here then, since I drive so many different walks of life every day.
I literally listen every day and find out something new. Whether it's something for myself, my community, or just something special that's going on in the city.
Yeah, thanks. I'll keep it locked right here on WOVU 95.9 FM.
Good, because I'm sure you and all your other writers would love this station just as much as I do.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson and my conversation with bassist Glenn Holmes. We've been talking about that quandary, that conundrum that some musicians have. They can play music, but they can't improvise. And then you have some who are gifted and are able to navigate both worlds. And Glenn Holmes is one of those people who can navigate both realms. I've been privileged to be on stage with him and watch the magic of the bass. It was a bass guitar. I haven't seen you play that bass fiddle or the double bass or whatever the name of it is, but I will look forward to that. I, at the beginning of the show, started dropping a whole bunch of names, and I would be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to talk about some of the experiences that you've had with some of these folks. So I'm going to start with homegrown Vanessa Rubin. Talk to us about playing in the vicinity of or for Vanessa Rubin.
Okay. As you know, Vanessa is known worldwide, great singer. I think, I don't know if it was the first time I played with her, but one of the most memorable times I played with her was actually, believe it or not, at one of the Football Hall of Fame. When they have the Football Hall of Fame games, and they have a lot of activities down there. Well, one of them was had a fashion show, but before the fashion show, we had the opportunity to perform for the audience. And when I say we, I hope I remember. I know one guy's name I can't remember, but anyway, it was myself, Eric, Vanessa, Antonio Hart, and Cindy Blackman. We played for about an hour, and it was great. I have a video of that, as a matter of fact. It was a great experience, working with all of the folks, and I've also played with Vanessa in terms of locally. We did a concert at her church years ago, which is a very nice experience, and now we was talking about Tad Dameron, kind of off air, so to speak. And, that Vanessa has done a CD, dedicating all the music to Tad Dameron. It is the music of Tad Dameron. So that's definitely something to get out and support her through that. But she's a beautiful person. She's supportive, and I like to support her as well. So I've had positive experiences with her every time I've performed with her or been.
Okay. I want to segue to another songstress, Nancy Wilson.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the organizations that I play with is the Jazz Heritage Orchestra. Well, that orchestra focuses mainly on the music of Black composers, big band composers. So this is a regular big band, and it's a very good band. It's interracial, which is another nice thing about it. But like I said, we focus on the music of Black composers like Duke Ellington and Frank Foster. We're going to do something for Wendell Logan. I don't know if you know who Wendell is. He is from Oberlin, the late, great Wendell Logan, that kind of stuff. So anyway, years ago, maybe about 10 years ago, if my mind is working correctly, we had the opportunity to perform a concert with Nancy Wilson at Severance Hall. And that was a great experience. Of course, Nancy sounded wonderful. And I still remember that as one of the most important and memorable performances that I was ever involved in. You know, just being on stage with Nancy Wilson. And during that performance, I got to play just the trio thing with a couple of songs trio with Nancy, myself, and her pianist. And that made it even better, you know, because I was in the big band. That's one kind of playing. But then when you get into the trio setting or a small group setting, that's a different kind of playing.
I can only imagine you were channeling Ron Carter as you were standing up there on the stage.
Oh man, like I said, that's a different kind of playing when you're in a smaller group. So your responsibilities, they're the same, but the level increases. You know.
Okay. Someone from out West Way, Bobby Watson.
Oh yeah. Bobby's a great guy. I've done one of the schools that I taught at when I was living out in Wichita was Friends University, and Bobby and I were part of a group of performers that did a concert out at Friends University for their jazz festival. And as a matter of fact, one of the other members of the band was, I don't know if you know the name, Matt Wilson. He's a drummer. He actually was one of my students. He was in when I taught jazz band at or jazz ensemble when I was teaching at Wichita State. He was my drummer, you know, and he's doing quite well. As a matter of fact, he just posted an article about himself or his band that the New York Times ran. But anyway, Bobby's funny thing about Bobby is when I was at Wichita State, Bobby's niece, who I didn't know it at the time, who's the trombonist, was at the school as well, you know. And she told me, you know, later, you know, Bobby was her uncle, and you know, Bobby and I had a nice conversation about her when I got to play with him. He's such a badass, as they say. I mean, he can play anything, you know, and he's very down to earth. Talks to you like you just one of the cats, you know what I mean? So I've performed not only with him, but I like to perform his music. And as a matter of fact, I have a jazz combo at the Music Settlement where I teach now, and we've played some of his music, you know, Echo and Jekyll. I can't think of the other ones, but we always play some Bobby Watson stuff because he took kind of the same path. You know, we had a conversation. He took kind of the same path that I did as far as composition and everything. Because I think he went to the University of Miami in Florida, and he got his degree in composition as well. So he's a great writer and a great person.
Yes. Speaking of great people, you had occasion to perform with Benny Golson?
Yeah. Again, that's through the Jazz Heritage Orchestra as well. Okay. So I might mention that our artistic director, how can I say this? He played with the Count Basie Orchestra. So he knows a lot of the cats, the older cats, and like Benny Golson, and that was part of a Jazz Heritage Orchestra performance as well.
Okay, so you mentioned your event at the Bop Stop. Give us the details on that.
Okay, so on January 11th. We have a group called the Flyover Collective that will be performing at the Bop Stop. And that group will include Mike Wade on trumpet. He's from Cincinnati. He also plays in the Jazz Heritage Orchestra. And a guy named Andrew Bishop on saxophones. Andrew's he was at Wichita State when I was there. He's now one of the instructors in the jazz department at the University of Michigan right now. So he's up there with Jerry Allen when she was alive and so on and so forth. So he's a real player. It's actually Dr. Andrew Bishop. Ed Ridley's going to play piano and Paul Samuels on drums. So we just thought that we put this thing together. And when I say we, it was myself, Mike, and Andrew put this thing together, and we would just get gigs throughout the region and beyond, and just present music, our own music and music of others to audiences, in the Midwest.
Mm. That should be a great show, and I just want to amplify a couple of the folks that you have in the group. I'm not familiar with Mike or Andrew, but I am familiar with Paul Samuels and Ed. Ed does a lot of musical theater. I know he's done stuff at Caramoo and other places, so he'll play through plays. A phenomenal musician. And then Paul Samuels, many may not know, but he is actually the husband of Lady Skill.
Right.
And a jazz drummer. Just quickly before we take another break, talk about your relationship with Eric Gould.
Oh, well, when I moved, I grew up in Cleveland. I went out to Wichita for school. When I graduated, they offered me a job. Like, we want you on the faculty, because in their words, you speak both languages. You speak jazz and the classical. We want you on our faculty. I was like, of course, So I was out there for about 19 years, and I was very close to my grandma. So as she got older, she had some health challenges. I wanted to be closer to her. So I came back to Cleveland. When I came back, I met Eric. I think I met him through the music settlement. I think he was there, or his wife. I know his wife has been teaching there for years, Diana. But anyway, we started playing together, and we did a lot of gigs together with his, it was either a trio or quartet, depending on what the occasion called for. I have a lot to thank Eric for, as far as introducing me to the jazz players in the Cleveland area, or I should just say the musicians. Many of them were jazz players, but many of them were not. And just turning me on to different things, clubs and all that. Like, that's where I found out about Club Isabella, the old Club Isabella, Actually, we played there several times, but I have a lot to thank Eric for. He's a good friend, still a good friend, and we stay in touch now. You know, he's teaching up at Berkeley
Right.
right now. So, yeah, good guy.
Yes. Well, thanks to Eric's departure, I became connected to you and Okanta musically. So I want to thank both of you for being a part of my musical journey. We're going to talk about your time with Okanta when we get back. This is
All
open.
right.
This is Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM, WOVU, Burton Belcar Community Radio. We'll be right back.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
What's up?
WOVU plays the best music, right?
Yeah.
And WOVU has the best talk shows and information for the city?
Yeah.
Well, now WOVU 95.9 FM has the best website to match. So right now, go ahead and log on to WOVU.org and see exactly what I'm talking about.
I know that's right.
You never have to guess what's going on WOVU 95.9. Log on to the homepage and see exactly what's playing right now, every day, 24/7.
Oh, yeah.
You can find the program schedule, events going on around the city, and check out who's who at WOVU.
You already know what it is.
So do me a favor, pull out your smartphone, your laptop, your desktop, your tablet, log on to WOVU.org right now. Can you do that for me?
I got you, fam.
WOVU 95.9 FM, the best radio station, now has the best website. WOVU.org. Check it out.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson. I'm speaking with Glenn Holmes, a phenomenal bassist with a pedigree that is so impressive. You know, I have to stop gushing, but I'm just looking at all those names, man. You played with some of the greats, and you did me the favor of being a part of my band as a result of our connection with Mwatapu Okanta, who is the chair of the Department of Africana Studies at Kent State University. He is a poet. He has performed with a string quartet on a lot of different occasions, but he also has been a part of a group that he put together that included you, Bill Ransom, and Eric Gould. Talk to us about how that came together.
Well, again, Eric was kind of the common denominator there. I met Okanta through Eric as being part of that, you know, Okanta's band. And by the way, it's my privilege to play with you, man. No, don't sell yourself short. But you know, I have all the respect for Okanta. You know, he's totally immersed in what he's about, so to speak. Mm-hmm. There's nothing funny about him. You know, when he's talking about African history and just his dedication to the diaspora, you know, I mean, you would be hard to find a fault in him in terms of that. You know, I've enjoyed playing with him. I enjoy, you know, he likes Leon Russell, and you're talking about some of the other cats like Coltrane and so on that he turned you on to, Arthur Blythe. Well, you know, that's hip stuff for me too. So I admire him. I admire what he's accomplished. You know, he's speaking of being published, he's been published many times. You know, he takes his trips over to Africa. I'd even talked to him about joining him on one of those. I don't know if I can go on one of them long walks. He's talking about walking 12 miles to get to a certain place. You know, I don't know if I could do that at this point in my life. But anyway, I would like to go over there. It'd be nice to go over there with somebody that knows his way around. Yeah. You know, as going over there as a quote unquote tourist.
Well, I can tell you, Okanta ain't walking 12 miles now. As a matter of fact, we went to the Kakum forest, and it's actually Ghana's most popular tourist destination. That's a side note. But you walk up this hill, and I swear it seems like it's almost a mile that you walk up this hill, because you're walking for 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So we did make it up the hill, but he did not walk around the there's this like a catwalk up there. You're thousands of feet up above the floor of the rainforest, and he didn't take that. It's a footbridge. You go from one platform to the next. But he made it up the hill, but he wasn't walking on the footbridge.
Yeah, so I have all the respect for him in terms of what he's all about, and what he stands for as far as the African culture and accomplishments and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. So talk about some of the performances that you guys did, because I know he's very well connected. So I'm sure that you performed in different places in Cleveland, anywhere outside of the estate.
Not with me, not outside the state. Oh, I take that back. Where did we play? Gettysburg. Where's Gettysburg?
Pennsylvania, I believe.
Yeah, we played somewhere down there, which was a nice performance. Okanta did a couple of workshops down there. We finished the weekend off with the band performing. Of course, we performed down in Akron at that amphitheater down there several times. And we've done some smaller things at like the student union, Akron. I mean, at the Akron University, and of course, we've done the same kinds of things that I've done with you and the Jazz Poets. Those kind of performances down at the University of Akron as well. So we've gotten around, but you mentioned him performing with a string quartet. That's the Cavani.
Cavani, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wasn't involved. That was before my time with him. But I take that. I mean, he has performed with them since I've been back, but those performances are just the quartet and himself. Mm-hmm. It's not the full band with him.
Yeah.
So I'd like to. I haven't been able to attend one of those, but I'd like to hear one of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I noticed in your bio there was a mention of you being a songwriter. Can you talk about some of the things that you have composed as a composer?
Oh, sure. Well, I've written a violin concerto. That was, as a matter of fact, that was my master's thesis, the violin concerto, which has been performed. I wrote my favorite piece that I've composed is a solo piece for viola. Viola reads in what's called alto clef. Most musicians are familiar with treble clef and bass clef. The alto clef is out there all by itself because the viola is the only one that plays in that clef. So as a way to learn that clef, because I hadn't been exposed to it a lot myself, I wrote a piece for viola, solo piece for viola. And now it's actually my favorite piece. And I had it last year. I had Alicia Nelson, who's an African-American violist in the Cleveland Orchestra, recorded for me. And she did a phenomenal job recording that. I've written a piece for fretless electric bass and percussion ensemble called Within the Next It Will Be. And the whole thought there was I wrote this piece back in, I want to say the mid to late 80s. And it was at the time when the fretless electric bass was just coming into its own, and at that time you couldn't buy a fretless electric bass as easily as you can now. So I remember I had a Fender Precision bass, a fretted one, and I bought a fretless neck and switched out the necks, and that was my fretless bass. And that's what most guys had to do back then, or they took their fretted instruments and pulled the frets out and filled them with, some kind of composite there and made it fretless. But those were the early days of the fretless neck on the bass. So on the fretless bass. So that piece was talking about this instrument, the title. This instrument is coming on, and this is going to be a lot more prominent in the future. And then here comes Jaco Pastorius, and everything changed for the fretless bass when he came along.
Yes. So I have to ask you, and I was thinking about Jaco as you were talking about a fretless bass. Who were your favorite bassists?
Oh man, that's such a hard question because there's so many. I can tell you who I first started listening to, but I don't want to put out a finite list, So needless to say, Ray Brown was my first eye opener bassist. It's like, this cat is bad, and Mr. Turner turned me on to him. Then Ron Carter, Eddie Gomez, Dave Holland, of course, Christian McBride. But this is years later. And Buster Williams, he's probably my favorite bassist of all time, because as I've told my students and other musicians, to appreciate him, this is get back to different ways of listening to music. Put some earphones on and just sit down and listen to his bass lines. Just follow this cat. It's like he's got a palette in front of him, and he's drawing all these pictures as he's walking. It's so melodic. It's just wonderful. So those are some of my favorite guys on acoustic bass. So Stanley Clarke. Many people associate Stanley Clarke, as they should, with electric bass. But Stanley's a phenomenal acoustic bass player. When he was playing with Chick Corea early on, he played more acoustic bass than he played electric bass. So I mean, there's many out there, that influence the way I play. And I think, speaking of that, some of that orchestral stuff influenced the way I played. That avant-garde stuff influenced the way I played. So you can't get too much of music. All of it will rub off on you in some way or another.
Okay. Well, I'm surprised to hear you didn't mention Marcus Miller or
yeah. Of course, like I said, see, I could be listening, guys, for the next 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Marcus is so bad, that's another guy. He's a player, he's a composer. A lot of people don't know that he plays bass clarinet as well. Yeah, Marcus, he's kind of the standard for the funk thing now. But, I've been listening to, and I can't call their names out, but I've been listening to some of these great gospel music bass players lately over the last year or so. Man, these guys are killing it.
Yeah, and there's one other name I'm going to put out there who's just blown me away, and that's Mohini Day. That lady.
Oh, yeah. Woo. I was looking for her stuff this morning. She can play anything.
But she's like the equivalent of Tiger Woods in the basses, because she was born with one and she's been playing it for a long time. Glenn, this has been absolutely amazing. I want to mention one more time that you and the Flyover Collective will be playing at the Bob Stop on January 11th at 8 o'clock. So you can go to their website, get all the information that you need about that. And you definitely want to be in there, because I'm sure it's going to be a phenomenal performance. Thanks for joining me on Open Door, and we will look forward to what's coming up next for Glenn
Thank
Holmes.
you for the opportunity, Vince. I enjoyed it, man.
All right. And to those of you who have been listening, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your best day. Peace.